As part of that discussion, obviously, the public would be most attuned to the term fake news, for example, which is part of disinformation. What is fake news? What is it really, and why is it important that people care about it?
So fake news is a term I actually hate, if I'm honest, and I try and use it as little as possible because it was popularised by Donald Trump.
Well, it's only become a dictionary term since 2017,
Indeed.
Even though the actual practice has been around for hundreds of years.
Yes, so I prefer to use the term disinformation or misinformation. We can get into the difference between the two perhaps, but I think what the pandemic has brought home is that this does matter. I think previously, pre-COVID, people were kind of aware of disinformation or fake news as how a lot of people would have understood it. But I think it always seemed a bit abstract. I think, to be blunt, a lot of people thought it was something that happened in America for a long time. And I think what the pandemic has done is bring home, actually, this is very real. Both before and since we had a vaccine program, disinformation, especially so during a pandemic, can be deadly. And as we know, if we take it away from the pandemic situation, and I accept this is a very extreme situation, an extreme example rather, if we compare it to what happened in the US Capitol on January 6th, that's an example of where disinformation leads to radicalization, which leads to a very serious threat.
Can you give me an example of something that was happening there that brought that about?
So, I mean, we could spend ages.
There's a lot.
We could spend ages talking about that. But what you essentially had was
the stolen the election thing.
Yeah. So you had a disinformation campaign about an election being stolen that ran all the way to the top of the U.S. government. I mean, just think about that for a minute. This cocktail of online and offline disinformation that only had to radicalize a relatively tiny part of the U.S. population when you think about it. That led to an insurrection on the Capitol, people being injured, people being killed, and a full-on assault to an election result. So this isn't something that's abstract. It's not something that only happens in America. There are other examples of how disinformation has led to, if not necessarily a full-on assault on democratic structures, but have led to riots, distrust, of fellow citizens, of national institutions, in a way where it's hard to put that genie back in the bottle. One of the earlier examples would be the riots in Tallinn in Estonia in 2007, which I won't go into all the detail of, but it's one of the closer to home European examples of why disinformation, if you don't deal with it, if you don't equip people with the tools to recognise it, can get out of hand in a really dangerous way.
And a lot of that disinformation obviously is transferred through social media.
Yeah.
Do you believe that the social media companies are doing enough to combat this? Indeed, what should they be doing?
No, they're not. And there's, again, this is a whole discussion we could have in itself, Drew, where social media companies see themselves not as, they're not like newspapers, for example. They don't produce the stories that are on their platforms. They are platforms and not publishers. I would contest that. In terms of how you deal with this, not to go too technical, no one country can do this alone. What this is going to require is for largely the democratic countries in the world to come together to build the rules around this. If I can use a phrase that might send a shiver up a lot of people's spines, a coalition of the willing to deal with this. You can't have Europe running one set of rules and the US running a different set, and Canada running a different set, and the UK running a different set, because the people who benefit from that are the social media companies and those who want to use social media platforms to disinform. So we need to come together. We need international rules, whether that's a treaty or whatever. Who knows? That debate is still to be had. But so long as we all try and do a patchwork approach to this, as is happening at the minute, we will be forever manipulated, and that certainly doesn't benefit the public.
And that patchwork approach is part of the issue that you've been raising in the paper. You said you wanted to start a discussion on this.